doot, 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 doot. All right, there we go. Are we working on the YouTubes? Are we working on the YouTubes? You're working on the YouTubes. All right. Okay. A beard is on cam. Hello. Hello, other camera. Hello, this camera. So, we're still set up on the kill team mat for playing Necromunda like we did last Sunday. We're still set up over here because we're going to play again on Sunday. So I figured I'd just keep it set up, and it would be kind of cool to talk about Necromunda as I've got the terrain all painted now from the Hive War starter box. I thought it'd be cool to put my models in front of that sort of as a little backdrop for it. Let's see who's blowing up my phone. Work friends. Alright. So, today I'm going to talk about... This is like the little cam is like Jazz Hands cam. That's like what it's for. It's like the gesticulating cam. I'm going to talk about building a gang because I have been putting together my Goliaths. And they are just freaking rad models. Super freaking rad models. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit. So, for the Goliaths, this is their standard box. This is 10 dudes to use as your boss and champions and regular old hombres, just all the standard dudes that you need in a gang. Right? So no matter what else you pick up, you're going to need this box. And like I said, it's 10 guys. You're going to get a bunch of options for a bunch of different weapons. Not everything they can take, which is where this little box right here comes in. So every faction does not have one of these yet, but this is a set of weapons. So it's 2 duplicate sprues, just like this. And it is a bunch of weapons for your guys. There's things like an auto pistol in here, a bolter, a hand with a cigar, which is really cool, a hand flamer, underslung flamer, a melt-a-gun, a bunch of stuff you don't have in the regular set. So this is entirely optional. It's more like if you want extra bits and pieces for your dudes than anything specific. It's not like a mandatory thing like the standard boxes. And the other thing the Goliaths have is this. So this is their like extra add-on kind of guys. So it's a bunch of elite guys and then a few sort of like specialized units. You get 6 models on this one. 2 duplicate sprues again with 3 models each. So let's take a look at some of the actual models, and I'll talk about how I chose to put my gang together. So this is my boss. When I first opened these runners up, let me grab the actual runners because I have them all over here. They're not in stacked order, but I have them. When I first opened the runners up, the first thing I did was just take a look over them. Right? See what pieces jumped out at me. I was like, okay, you know, this hammer is really cool. It's like this big, like, rocket hammer, like pistons and shit. That's super cool. Oh, this axe with a skull on it. That's really cool. You know, this, like, big old revolver. That's really cool. This thing that looks like a big wrench. That's really cool. I was like, all right, I like all of those. How do I get those onto models, right? So I went through and I built just the standard bodies. I didn't put any of the accoutrements or anything like that on them. I built just the standard bodies. And then I went through and started adding the bits that I liked. I was like, okay, I'm going to build a few key units that I think are really cool, and they're going to be sort of the core or the spirit of my gang, and then everything else is going to kind of fill in around that. So in this case, this is going to be Meat Hammer, my leader, and I was like, I really like this hammer. This hammer is the jam. I'm going to build this hammer. I was like, all right, well, what can I put in his other hand? And I was looking through the rule book and looking through the options. I was like, well, it doesn't really have anything fun. And then I saw the hand flamer, and I was like, oh, that'll be fun. That'll be a lot more fun than like a combi plasma gun that it seems like it wanted you to build him with. So I went ahead and I threw that on there, and I threw some little bits and bobs on him. But I chose to build a few of these like core pillar units that I knew that I wanted to have on my team, right? Guys that I thought would really be like, like the spirit and sort of embodiment of what I wanted this unit to be, right? Because these guys they're like pure machismo, like 80s action movie, like muscles and armor and like stupid clunky weapons, and I love that stuff, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to build a couple guys that really stand out. So I was like, all right, I really want to build this guy. And then I was like, oh, really want to build a guy holding the cigar with a flamethrower. Because I was like, that's really thematic, And I was like, oh, I really want that hammer thing and the pistol. Those are cool pieces. I want to do those too. And that big axe, right? I was like, these are the bits I know I really, really want. Right, these are the core guys that are the spirit of my team. When you look at these models, you're going to be like, oh man, it's, they embody what your team looks like, right? So I went through and I full built these guys because I was like, no matter what team I put together, I'm going to be able to have these guys on it, and everything else will be able to fill in the gaps, right? So then I went through and I was like, okay, well, how do I make some other kind of more generic guys, some guys that might be cheaper for points, so I could get to 1,000 points. So I started, I thought this gun was cool too, actually. But I started going through and I was like, oh, he's got a bolter, and we'll give him a mace, he won't be too expensive. This guy's just got a shotgun, this guy's got a bolt rifle, this guy's got another bolt gun. But I started to make kind of these like more generic kind of like filler in, just like empty kind of shithead guys. Here's a guy with just like a melee weapon, and I did this so that I sort of would have chaff to put into the team, right? Like I didn't really have any like plans of characters or anything like that for these guys. They're just sort of like numbers fill for my team, right? For filling in around these core pillar units that I really liked, right? Like I wanted to come up with names and stories and stuff like for these guys. And if that happens for these guys too over the course of a game, that's awesome, right? Cool. That's super cool. But these guys, they're the chaff, right? So I built my core pillars, right? I built my guys that are going to hold up the team, and then I built sort of the filler. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start building the Forge Stimmers. The Stimmers and Forgeborn box. Oh, and by the way, you do get tons and tons and tons of extra pieces. There's a ton of bits and bobs left over on these things, of weapons and armor and grenades and all kinds of crazy stuff left over, which is really cool. And if you look at, I have almost an entire complete empty sprue of this left over from building my one unit. So that's pretty great too. So you have a lot of those left over, which is really, really nice. All right. So then I went to the other set of directions. And this is what I have left over. There's not a ton of options in here. Maybe a couple of pieces of armor that I'm still going to play with. A couple pieces of wire that might be options, stuff like that. Because lots of these things, they have sort of very specified arms, right? So you get some ladies, and you get some dudes. And the dudes have dude arms, the ladies have lady arms, which is a little weird, but they only sort of fit really one way. So you could technically build like 2 chainsaw ladies, but I wanted to have the more variety of the models. So I followed the directions on these. Really, no modification, no nothing, because there's really not a ton of options for these guys. So I've got a lady with a chainsaw and a lady with a weird fusion weapon welder thing. Same thing with the dude. Dude with chainsaw, dude with a fusion weapon melder thing. And then you get 2 big guys. Now you can build duplicates of these just like you can with the little people. But I built them according to the instructions pretty much. So you get a guy with 2 chainsaw axes and a dude with 2 what I think are supposed to be grenade launchers but look kind of like heavy bolters. Again, they're both great models, and they actually have a bunch more pieces that I'm going to add on as little bits of add-on. But that's pretty much what you get. So unless you really want to build very duplicative kind of units, you're going to probably build one of each. Just have options. Now, you know, this is my team, right? Now, I was picking a lot of as much of the, like, kind of 4G kind of industrial equipment as I can. You know, like this guy's got this thing called a spudjacker, which is like a big hammer, because I liked that aesthetic. And when I paint them, I'm planning on not doing the standard fire. I'm planning on doing like kind of like a tin, like kind of beaten armor over either yellow or orange, kind of like industrial clothing, right? Like something they would be issued. I thought that would be kind of cool. It's also one of the reasons I went very heavily with flamethrowers for them, because I liked the idea that, you know, they're probably used to heat and stuff working in forges. So that's what I went for those guys. And I was like, you know, they're the Ogrins, and there's a box of them, and you get a couple of options with it, not a ton. But I was like, I want an Ogrin to go with my guys. So I was like, okay, well, you know, these little guys, they have this weapon, so I'll give him that. And then this guy's got a spudjacker, so I'll give him a spudjacker. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So then I was like, you know what? I've got little bits of armor and stuff left on these sprues. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give him a mohawk, because that's super rad, and a little piece of armor and stuff like that. You know, and just start to work in some of the same kind of things that these guys have, so that I can paint him up to really match this team and not sort of be like a standalone unit, but really like part of this gang. So, yeah, he was a sort of an add-on where I just wanted to match like what they already had, you know, what I had already established by building this guy, by making the like pillar of my gang, you know. This guy with his flamethrower and his hammer and his cigar and his chainsaw mohawk, you know, he's the center pillar of my gang. Now, as far as being a competitive list or anything like that, that's not what these guys are at all, right? Like this is one model and a couple other models that I picked and built these sort of central pylons for the central concept for, and built them around that. I've done a similar thing with the Eschers, except I've only built half of them because I'm not super sure what direction I want to take their theme yet. You know, these guys, I was like, oh, I like the industrial stuff, so that's what I want to do. I'm not super sure what I want to do with them yet. But I wanted to build around sort of like one central model, one guy that sort of like perfectly identified the team and the concepts for it. But yeah, that's how I chose to put these guys together, and sort of some of the idea of how I went about it. You know, going through initially, picking out pieces that I thought were neat, pieces that I thought matched their theme really well, and then going through, making some filler to sort of fill around those pillars, and then building all of the other options that I could, really, just in case I wanted to use them. And then some more little tiny bits of basic hit bashing to get some of the other options to match a little better. But that's what I've done. I hope this was interesting. I'm going to kit bash some of these guys a little bit more, get them a little bit more fun stuff going on, and then they'll get painted up, and they will be in my weird little play by myself on Sundays things that I'm doing. So I'm going to play these guys on Sunday, see how they go. I'm also going to drill out all their barrels because it's triggering me if they're not drilled out. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully the idea of like making a core central concept and then expanding out from there was helpful. Because honestly, when I looked at all these runners and all these models and all these boxes, I had really terrible option fatigue, or option paralysis. Like, I felt like if I was going to pick weapon options and stuff, I was going to screw myself out of everything else that I could do, right? I'd be like, oh, why didn't I pick the auto shotgun? The auto shotgun's the best thing, or I might really want that one in the future or whatever. And when I first cracked those boxes, I was super worried about that. But then I was like, no, I'm going to take a step back and come up with an idea, and I'm going to build my models around that. And I think it worked out, and I think they look pretty great, and hopefully they'll be fun on the table. And we'll see on Sunday, because they're going to murderize the hell out some zombies. So we're going to do a wave-based hold the ground thing, where I put like 20 zombies on the table. It should be pretty rad. Anyway, hopefully this was fun and interesting. And if you come back, I will see you on Sunday.